Welcome back. The Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has ordered an immediate lockdown and imposition of a dusk-till-dawn curfew for 3 weeks in 2 districts of the country in a bid to stop the spread of the deadly Ebola virus. Places of worship, markets, bars and entertainment will be closed, and restrictions have been placed on movement in and out of the 2 central districts of Mubende and Kassanda for 21 days.
I've come back the 3rd time to talk to you about the Ebola outbreak that we have in the districts of Mubende, Kyejegwa, Kassanda, Kagadi, and Bunyangabo. Movements into and out of Mubende and the Kassanda districts is prohibited. There will be curfew in Mubende and Kassanda districts starting from 7 p.m. Sawa Muyekiro up to Sawa Kuminabiri Zekiro. A total of 58 confirmed cases and 19 deaths.
The move is a U-turn for President Museveni, who previously said there was no need for such measures.
We assure Ugandans and all residents that the government has got capacity to control this outbreak, as we have done before. Therefore, there is no need for anxiety, panic, restriction of movement, or unnecessary closure of public places like schools, markets, places of worship, etc. as of now. This virus we can fight it more easily than corona, because number one, it does not go through the air.
Now, this latest Ebola outbreak has killed 19 people among 58 recorded cases, but reports say that the real number of deaths and cases may be higher. According to the president, cargo trucks will still be allowed to enter and leave the areas, but all other transport will be stopped. He enjoined citizens to cooperate with authorities to bring the outbreak to an end in the shortest possible time. Now, there are several angles to look at this from. The first would be the fact that, of course, the president did say that there was no cause for alarm earlier on. Unfortunately, we are now seeing that there is a cause for alarm. And why is there a cause for alarm? One would be the fact that this is a strain Uganda, we don't have a vaccine for it. This is the Sudan strain, which was discovered in the 1970s. Unfortunately, we have a vaccine for the Zaire strain, which does not work for the Sudan strain. The second issue of concern would be the fact that, unfortunately, the supposed first case that was reported, the 24-year-old man that died in Mubende, there were reports that Ebola had been discovered 3 weeks before this man was, before he died. And there have been concerns about the hospitals he went to, because he went to the hospital 3 times. Hospitals he went to, the health workers he's been in contact with. So there are fears that it spread more than it's been reported. 19 deaths, 58 confirmed cases. Some of them have run away. Some of them who are afraid have run away.
It's also difficult to understand when a president says there's no cause for alarm, because we're talking of the Ebola virus. We're not talking COVID. He said that it's not airborne, and so there's no cause for alarm. But obviously that's not the case. And the only time that you can say there's no cause for alarm with the Ebola virus is when you've gone, maybe a week, 2 weeks without any reported case. You are 100% sure that you've traced you've done your contact tracing with every single possible person that people who were infected came across. That's the only time. The way it looks currently, it stands a really, really high risk, because I've seen reports, of a case in Israel. I'm not sure how true it is. The person supposedly came from Uganda. The way it looks now, it's very, 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 likely that it will spread beyond Uganda. And also, there's reports from the capital Kampala Other districts, that have not been currently locked down have also, reported cases, suspected cases.
Even though they'll tell you, the authorities will say that there is no case in Kampala that hasn't got to Kampala, but it was a husband. There are also reports of a husband and a wife that tested positive in Kampala.
All of those are really just to reduce panic, and all of that. But it's still a situation that needs urgent national response. And unfortunately, we're currently, of course, still getting out of the COVID pandemic. We're still getting out of an economic recession across the world. But it's also going to be really, really hard to convince Ugandans in these districts to be on lockdown and not go out to find food to eat. One of the things we're going to be talking about today is the eradication of poverty. And if you look at, the poverty level in many of all these regions, many of all these countries, it's alarming.
And COVID-19 had a huge role to play.
Absolutely.
Imagine adding Ebola to that. Ebola was a deadly time.
Absolutely.
As much as COVID-19 was a global pandemic, Ebola has the potential to be another global pandemic. So whilst we're talking about the people of Uganda rising up to put measures in place, I think it's a global call. Because if there's one thing that COVID-19 showed us, is the fact that we're a global village. And the fact that one thing is happening to one small country over there, you might think it's a country far away. Tomorrow, someone will travel from that country to another country and end up in your country. And somehow, it will start to spread.
Absolutely.
So we are all one little interconnected village, and we must all rise up, not just for Ebola in Uganda, but for ourselves in the rest of Africa.
I read a story about a woman, I think her name is Christine Namuli, who collapsed at the Nakasero market, a few days ago at about 8:30 p.m. The reports say that she was bleeding from her mouth and nose, and it scared police and every other person from, coming to her. It took a couple of hours before her body was eventually taken away from that market. But, why I'm sharing that, unfortunately, is because, I need people to understand that the fact that she was in the market before she even got to the stage where she collapsed and died.
The number of people that she has come in contact with.
When we're talking of a marketplace, there's traders, there's other people passing by that, have a very high risk of, also contacting it from the same space where she is. I understand it's not airborne, but it's Ebola. And so Uganda needs to understand that its problem is not just going to be taken away by looking the other way. The president saying that, no cause for alarm, it's not airborne, that's not going to solve the problem. And the whole of the continent needs to be on high alert at this point.
Absolutely. And when you talked about contact tracing, you've talked about this woman and her having collapsed in the market. There's also concerns about at the initial stages of the discovery of this new strain in Uganda. It happened in a mine, close to a mine. And these local mine, workers, they're not thinking about, some of them don't believe in it. There have been reports that even their bike rides, I think it's called Boda, they don't believe that it's Ebola. They just believe it's a scam. So how much awareness and sensitization is put out there? The authorities have also come out to say that, to discourage people from going to local healers and saying that they would arrest people who prevent themselves or refuse to be isolated when they test positive. So these are some of the challenges that
even in the developed world, it's hard to enforce lockdowns.
Yeah.
Because I remember, that there were anti-vaxxers, there were anti-mask, mandates. It's hard to enforce a lockdown on that level. Yes, Ebola is a different conversation from COVID, and people would maybe have more fear for it, but it's hard to enforce lockdowns in the face of poverty and hunger and some of all those things.